Yeah. Sometimes you go through self-doubt, but that's what grace is for, isn't it?
New figures reveal men are far less likely to seek medical support for mental health problems than women. The YouGov survey, the largest of its kind, polling more than 2,500 people who have had mental health problems, showed that 28% of men admitted they had sought medical help compared to 19% of women. In 2015, 75% of all suicides in the UK were male. It is the single biggest killer of men under the age of 45. 1 in 8 men in the UK have experienced a mental health problem. 3 out of 4 suicides are men. At any given time, 6% of fathers and 10% of mothers in the UK have mental health problems.
Right guys, so today we're going to be discussing health, specifically mental health. We've got 2 lovely ladies here who work in the mental health industry to go through the issues that we face as men and, you know, on mental health. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
So my name is Adura and I am a mental health practitioner. So I work in the psychological therapy service, supporting people with common mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression.
Okay, cool.
And my name is Anu. I am a mental health nurse and I work in forensic mental health, all male unit, and I've worked in men's mental health for 4 years.
So what would you say is the difference, like, because we were talking about this earlier, between mental health and physical health, and do they affect each other?
No, well, I mean, I was going to say no difference because we were discussing this. There's still health, but I guess the mental aspect of it is more how people think, their emotions, their behaviours, how they respond to the world, whereas physical health is more about obviously your physical body and things like that. But they are so interlinked and so intertwined that you can't really even separate them. And one thing that we find working in healthcare is that people tend to go to the doctors for more so physical health issues, rather than if they're feeling a bit down or they're feeling a bit anxious.
But that's the thing. Okay, so something happened, I'm not very happy. I don't all of a sudden think,
let's go to the GP.
I'm mentally ill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Let's go
I
to
think
the doctor.
there needs to be like what people need to understand is that in life you go through extreme highs and extreme lows, just in general. Do you get what I mean? And especially when you put into perspective that you're a Christian as well, whether it's an extreme high or extreme low, you still have Christ. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. So God gives us this joy that surpasses the understanding of man. So when you're supposed to be stressed, you're actually supposed to feel quite chilled because God has got you. Do you get what I mean? But then what happens is that people take that extreme high or that extreme low to the extreme and then say, right, that's it, I've got depression. Because even like this week that it's Mental Health Week, I've been reading a lot of people's like blogs and stuff about their own experiences, and you cannot actually classify depression as depression until you've had it for like a good amount of weeks, and it has to be continuous. Even as someone who does assessments, the first thing I ask is, how long have you been feeling like this? Do you know what I mean? If you say, oh, I've been feeling like this for 2 weeks, then I can't actually do anything, because 2 weeks, that's just an extreme low. Do you know, and we actually have that clarification that we can diagnose a patient with like bipolar and extreme lows. Do you know what I mean? Like we don't just straight away say boom, depression. So you have to like identify what it is that is making you feel like that, and it may just be like a season. If someone's just passed away, of course you're going to go through grief. Or if you're at uni, of course you're going to feel stressed. Or if you're moving jobs, or like you're in a department that you don't feel like settled, of course you're going to feel anxious. Do you get what I mean? So you have to kind of like gauge what it is, because depression is a really dark place. It's not something that you can just
claim.
This is what I'm saying. You can't just claim it, because the people that I know that, well, the patients that I come across that have depression, it's a lot. It's a lot. Do you get what I mean? And you feel like, wow, you've been going through this for so long by yourself. Like, that is exactly how depression and suicide almost link. But then my issue with physical health and mental health in this country actually is that even the government separates them. Because if you notice, you know, when everyone's talking about the NHS and talking about 50 billion to this, to the NHS, none of it goes to mental health. None of it goes to mental health. A lot of what mental health do is all privately funded, or people are funding things themselves. A lot of these things do not come, even when it comes to medication.
I was going to ask, sorry to interject, is it because it's hard to actually define mental health? Because if I sprain my ankle, okay,
then you can do next.
I know if my back's hurting, like it's easy to identify. But if, for an example, like we said before, I'm feeling low, and you know, obviously we know you have to go through it for
a certain amount of time.
Amount of time. Yeah. But how do you identify mental health? Because it's not just depression.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's feeling low. It can be an aspect of it. Having maybe some negative thoughts, some critical thoughts about yourself. But also, I mean, the obvious one is a change in behaviour. So a change in, you know, like for example, if somebody's more usually outgoing, they usually see their friends a lot, and all of a sudden they're really withdrawn, that might be an indicator that something's a little bit, it might be a little bit off. They might not have full-blown depression, but, you know, there's a change in behaviour there, and that might be a flag that, oh, you know, maybe something's not going, you know, quite right. And then from there, but then as Arnie said, you know, it's about, okay, if this only happens a couple of days, then you might just say, okay, well, you know, it's just a season. But if it's happening, it's persistent, you know, several weeks to several months.
But wouldn't that now cost a lot of money to monitor someone?
No.
Not really, no.
It costs us less to monitor you
than to
treat you.
Yeah.
Okay, because what happens is that if I'm monitoring you because what will happen is that when you go to your GP, they'll signpost you, and they'll either signpost you to the mental health community team or the crisis team, depending on how you feel. So if it's something as simple as, oh, you're feeling low, first thing, okay, community team, they'll get an assessment done. Someone like me will do your assessment, and I'll determine whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, and what I feel like I can offer you as a mental health professional. There are so many things out there that I could just say, do you know what, you need talking therapy, or you need to see a counsellor, or maybe you need to like, oh, you're at uni, there's counselling sessions there. You know, I can get you involved in the things going on in your community that I may not even have to monitor you for that long. And monitoring can literally be, okay, I speak to you every week. Do you get what I mean? How are you doing? How's it going? I had a patient who was at Oxford University in his second year, and he actually had to withdraw from uni for a little while because he was going through a season of depression. And it was really, really bad. He was from a Pakistani background, and they don't talk about things like that. So my version of monitoring him was actually to make sure that he still wanted to go back to university. He's applying for jobs, you know, he's getting there. And he was like, he felt so much better knowing that he could speak to somebody, and that was all he needed, just that he could speak to someone who was reliable, and he felt like if he did go a bit left, someone was there to help him. Do you get what I mean? Because you can feel a bit lost when they say, okay, we'll meet you in a week, and you think, what? So
that's a long time. So would you say that there's people place a high priority on physical
100%,
health rather than
100%,
mental health? Because you said as well, because like culturally, right? I don't know. I guess people just
don't talk about it.
Don't talk about it, and maybe don't talk about it because they don't feel it's as important. You know what I mean?
And also, might be a little bit of a lack of understanding, as you said. You know, what does it look like? What am I supposed to look out for? And so, therefore, the conversation isn't being had, but it's out there.
I think a lot of it is understanding. You know, the Bible says that a man perishes through lack of knowledge. You know, and you know, even myself, is like, I was going to ask a question before about, because all the signposts just seem to be like, oh, if someone is becoming withdrawn, if someone is going down or feeling something, is there any point like it goes the other way?
What do you mean?
And then like
positive emotion,
like joy, 100%.
That's true.
No, but I mean, because
always happy. Like, what's wrong with you?
So this person's just been like there, and all of a sudden they're like happy about catching the bus. They're happy about life.
Do you know what?
It's like,
I feel like it's one of them ones where you think about the lesser of two evils. So it's like if someone is in an extreme high, they're happy about catching the bus, they're happy about eating sweets, they're happy about going to Nando's, they're happy that someone's called them. Do you know what? But
it's been a change.
It's a change. I'm not concerned. Like honestly, I've got some patients.
So we're supposed to have joy. We're supposed to be
full of joy. You know, we're supposed to be like optimistic about everything.
I'm just making sure. I like life.
Do you know what? It's one of them ones where it's actually the lesser of two evils.
Right.
We've got patients who literally they could just be excited about everything. Like you knock on the door like, oh my god, that's you. Like, I'm just like, okay, chill out. Like, but do you know what? It's not affecting me, and in fact, it's making them feel really happy. So I'm not too concerned. My concern is when they're going downwards, because when they're going downwards, it's like a lot of things around them affect. If you watch EastEnders, Jean, Stacey's mum, she has bipolar, and if you notice when she was an extreme low, she was she thought people were coming to get her. She was, and it affected Stacey, it affected her brother, it affected everyone around them. But when she's in this extreme high, everyone laughs at her jokes, and you feel like, what are you doing? But it's not affecting anyone. To the extent where
I think that's the
key. Interesting.
Do you get what I mean?
Because you know how you get like physically like contagious diseases?
Yeah.
There could be mentally
contagious there is.
Well.
There are things that are genetic. Stacey's now got bipolar disorder in EastEnders. And do you know what? In fact, their storyline actually helped me pass one of my exams.
Seriously?
So because I was literally watching everything they did as a family, and in that exam I actually got 98% because of the amount of information I got from EastEnders.
Seriously?
But watching them was so interesting to see how they were assessing them. She was asking about the family background. She's like, oh, my mum's got bipolar, and I was like, listen, I need this for my exam.
But from what you're saying, it seems like all of us need some element of counselling because we all experience life.
This is it,
and life, as you said, has ups and it's down. So the same way we established in the beginning that, you know, guys should go for an annual checkup. How do we now check the state of our mind? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel. I genuinely feel like everyone needs like talking therapy. Talking therapy is one of them ones where it explores the things that you don't actually think about, or even things like mindfulness, that the world calls it mindfulness. To be honest, I just call it meditation. Like even in like worship and things like that. I've noticed like sometimes, because I sometimes sing in the choir, I notice that if I have my eyes open during worship, you see the women like on the floor rolling and like they're in their zone, and you see some of the guys, they're just like, listen, I'm just waiting for this to be over because I want the word to start.
Swaying,
do you know what I mean? They're just swaying left and right. They can't really lift their hand too high because their Versace shirt is being creased, you know, like. But what you need to understand is, even in that moment, you can actually open your mind to the things that God wants to speak to you about. You can actually open your mind and your heart. Everything that has been on your mind, like the Bible even speaks about like taking all your burdens off and giving it to. He's not talking to women. He's talking to everyone. Laying all your burdens down. Do you know what I mean? For God to literally take them from you. But what happens is that as a man, you feel like, no, I have to carry the burdens. Do you know what I mean? I have to carry the burdens of my wife.
Would you say that's like repression? Like when you
not repression, just a way of being. I mean, it's not really repression. I guess it's more about like culturally. That's what men tend to do. They just tend to
take the burden.
Take the burden, not be a little bit.
I would say it even gets to a point where like people just try and like ignore it.
Yeah, definitely.
And just put it somewhere and just act like it didn't happen, or act like you didn't feel that way, and just kind of get on with things. And then it looks like you're coping.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean? And then one day you just kind of
snap.
You know?
And then that's
and then everyone is like, well,
what's
where
going
did that
on?
come from?
But I think on that though, because I was going to say, just in terms of your question about how do you recognise it in others, like in terms of your family and stuff like that, I think you need to know how that person speaks. So somebody actually said to me, it might not be that men necessarily ignore mental health, it's just that maybe the way that they're expressing it, you might not. So case in point, like for example, I might say, oh, I'm feeling a bit low today, but someone else might say, oh, do you know what, my head's not really in it. And if you know that person, you'll know that my head's not in it means
so people have different ways.
So the language that people use, you've got to know what your language is, and obviously other people around you need to know what your language is, because then that's the signs that, oh, you know, my head's out of it. You know, I know like my husband works in football, and he says a lot of the kids say, oh, my head's not in it, and that's when they know, okay, you know what, this guy's not coping very well. So it's about knowing the language and also changing their body language and in their behaviour really. So
even if their interests,
their interests, hobbies that they were into before, I'm not into it anymore, for example. Like exercise is like a number one thing that I see. A lot of people stop doing exercise and that's not really their thing. So it's kind of like there's different changes that people go through anyway, and sometimes some people might not be into stuff. But I think if it's significant enough and if you know the person, then you'll know, oh, this might be a sign.
Okay, I've got a question for both of you, obviously working in mental health, right? Okay, so this whole issue of like mental illness, right? How do you strike a balance between what's normal and what's mentally ill? Because, okay, take for example, right? I'm a Christian, So you guys are Christian, right? Yeah. Okay. So say for example, say you're not Christian, for example, and you are, right? And someone refers me to a therapist because I talk to God and I hear from God. I hear his voice. So I come to you and you say to me, you're the Christian, so you say, oh yeah, well, if God is leading you, if the Holy Spirit is leading you like this, blah, blah, we can have that conversation because we're on the same spiritual level, I guess, right? But you're not Christian, right? So if I came to you, you'd probably prescribe me some medicine and so working in like mental health, how do you deal with issues like that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, it sparked quite a lot of debate actually in the mental health field, just because in terms of the cultural aspects of things, like somebody might say, oh, they hear the voice of God, and that's perfectly normal for them. And for somebody a therapist who isn't actually Christian, now they're moving more towards understanding what that person's culture is and bringing that into the room, because obviously if you're completely discounting the fact that that person is a Christian, then you're completely missing them. Yes. So, you know, I hear the voice. Yeah, I hear the voice of. I hear the voice of God. That's part of my Christian culture, for example. It doesn't mean that I'm experiencing mental health difficulties, but I think what we do in mental health is that how much does that experience impact on your ability to function? Yeah. So I might be hearing the voice of God and I'm still able to work, I'm still able to socialize, I'm still able to do what I need to do. But if I'm hearing the voice and I'm not able to work, I'm isolated, I'm in my room, God is telling me to do things that maybe are impacting on my physical health. You know, there's all sorts of different things. So in that way, you wouldn't necessarily say that it's particularly helpful what's happening to them. So it all depends on how much is affecting your functioning.
So just like to ask you a question, like when you hear voices, so we talked a bit about like hearing like the voice of God and everything else, but obviously people, well, I do, I hear voices, but it's my own voice, you know, like when you're thinking things through and everything else. So how does that play out in terms of...
Are you psychotic?
yeah, in terms of like, okay, I'm going mad here, or, you know, there's an issue.
When it becomes overbearing, you're not able to function. Yeah. Okay. That's when you should be concerned. Some people hear voices, friendly voices, voices that tell them to be happy, voices that tell them to catch the bus, voices that tell them they're doing a good job.
And is that normal?
That is normal.
And do some people not have voices?
Some people don't have voices as well. It's like saying that you have dreams, you don't have dreams. Okay. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. But then when the voices become demanding and angry and changing your persona, even making it seem like it is scary stuff, or making you do things that you would never do.
But isn't that just you like internally telling yourself to do things that you shouldn't be doing?
No. There's a what we do when I'm doing assessments, I ask, are these voices commanding voices, or are they soft voices, or are they telling you what to do, or is it you telling yourself? Because you know if it's yourself. Okay. Do you know what I mean? So if, for example, I'm at the gym and I'm going on this thing, and sometimes I wait till the next track before I stop. Okay. That is my like time limit. But then sometimes I say, Annie, slow down. The machine is telling you that your pulse is 100 or something. Annie, slow down. I'm not saying it out loud. Yeah. That's me telling myself, slow down.
And you can hear that in
I can hear that in my head, that slow down, like chill out. Do you get what I mean? Or when I hear like the voice of God, where like sometimes I'll be praying, I'll be worshipping, and then I just hear the voice of God so sweet in my ears, like, this is what I want you to do, or this is how your season is going to be. Or sometimes it's like a telling off, like, you know, you shouldn't have done that. This is what, write it down. So the kind of things that you match to like almost like biblical standards and biblical perspectives when it comes to being a Christian and hearing voices, it's kind of like someone has heard it before, so I can't be crazy. Do you get what I mean? And it's not at a detriment to anybody else around me except for myself. Right. But then when it comes to the point where like those voices are telling you to jump off a building, or you're not good enough, or like, do you know what, someone else. This is it. These are the kind of things that lead to like anxiety. Yeah. Do you get what I mean? Something like, oh, everyone's going to be talking about you when you get into that room. Do you know what I mean? So don't go in yet. or do you know what I mean? What you're wearing is a bit, surely you should a bit, like change your.
It's like they're persecuting you. The voice
it's like those voices are telling you.
Yeah, okay.
But
so as Christians, go ahead. Yeah.
But in terms of like personality, suppose you've got voices in your head, and I'm not saying I do, but if you have voices in your head, it's like, what if? Like, what if I, like, like the people who like do all those daring stunts or whatever, what if I hold my breath for 3 minutes?
Yeah, that happens to me sometimes.
What if?
I do that sometimes. Like, literally, sometimes I have that voice in my head that's like, no. Do you know? Okay, I'll tell you, like, it's weird. But sometimes, like, if I'm driving, and I'm hitting 70, and I'm not supposed to go past 70. And then there was one time I was going to 80 and I thought, oh my gosh, imagine if I go to 100. Like, imagine if I go to 100. Like, come on. Or sometimes, like,
so whose voice was that?
But this is what I'm saying. It's not harming anyone.
No.
Do you know what I mean? But let me tell you what's dangerous. If I'm driving, like, on the motorway, let's say it's midnight, I'm driving, there's no one there.
Yeah.
And something in my mind might just be like, imagine if you just start swerving. Like, just start swerving.
Yeah.
No! Do you know what I mean? But it's like, no, we will find you. It's a dark road, all you have is your black box. Like, that's it. That's the only thing that's monitoring where you're going.
Yeah.
You can just be swerving anyhow. And literally, sometimes, like, I rebuke you. Do you know what I mean? I actually rebuke you. Yeah. Like, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus because I know that's not a friendly voice.
Yeah.
But then, if that voice actually commands me to do that, or something will happen to me, because that's what tends to happen.
That's when you need to be.
That's when you need to be. This is what I was gonna ask. As a Christian, right? Because God has given us, the authority to trample over scorpions and
everything.
Exactly, He has defeated that devil. Everything. Yeah. So, as a Christian, right? How do I know how to strike the balance between now I rebuke you in Jesus' name, or
and I need to help.
I need to see someone
when it comes to detriment to yourself.
Yeah.
So if, for example, like that consistently happens to me, like something's always telling me start swerving, or like I get home and it's like, if you don't listen, you're gonna die, or if you don't do, like, if you leave your house today, you're gonna fall in the road and someone's gonna smash your head, and it consistently is preoccupying your mind from doing activities of daily living. That is when you need to seek professional help.
Adura, if you can just help out in this, how do you feel like as men that we can, or how would you advise that as men that we deal with these kind of different things? Because it's serious. Like the more you guys are talking about it, the more I'm realizing that this is serious.
It is. It's even as serious. It's even as serious as cool. I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
All Christians, even the pastor. I mean, we all have equal access to God, right? Through Jesus Christ. But then it's like knowing the balance of when do I pray myself and when do I need to be prayed for, if you know what I mean. Like, because most people think, oh yeah, I'm good on my own, I have the same access anyway. But sometimes even the Bible says where 2 or 3 agree, whatever they bind here on earth is bound in heaven, right? So it's all about having those kind of relationships where there's someone, I guess, you can trust.
That's what I was going to say, that as much as one can do it by themselves, and that's obviously really helpful so that that you can pray, but there is safety in the multitude.
I was just about to say,
and
wicked,
there's a perspective that maybe you won't have that somebody that is above you, a mentor or whatever, has.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions, right? First of all, I just wanted to ask, as a guy, I guess it's an expression rather than a question, right? As a guy, right, I think to myself, I don't really want to come out and talk about my issues too much. One, because I feel like I'm going to be judged, because I'm going through this. And I don't know if you guys go through that as well. There's certain things that you might not just want to, especially culturally as well, but more as a guy, you just want to kind of, you feel like, okay, I can deal with this on my own. Yeah. Right? So how would you advise someone to, deal with that?
I feel like someone has to take the first step. Do you get what I mean? I feel like, even like going back to my brother, there's 3 of them, but he's the oldest and he's the first one to say that I need counselling with his own mouth, right? But then that has also opened the door for all of us to be like, actually, do you know what? I do struggle with a few things, like here and there, or like when we speak about like one season that we've been through as a family, we start to hear different perspectives. Oh, my dad would be like, yeah, I was a bit sad. I'm like, Dad? Like, you were sad? But then it's not supposed to be a shock to me. It's supposed to be like, oh, because when I talk about, oh yeah, I was crying and they'll just be like, oh yeah, like she was crying because she's a girl.
Female thing.
This is what I'm saying.
To do, they say.
But I feel like when you open the door as men, you also open the door for other people as well to not be afraid to say, do you know what? Actually, I do need a bit of help.
Yeah, just takes one person.
And even like working with men in the hospital, what I found is like, it is quite weird, but what happened is that one of the guys couldn't hear properly, and he said he was suffering quite a lot, and we didn't realise until I was like, are you not listening? And he was like, well, my left ear isn't really functioning properly, and he was trying to be like all macho about it, but I was just like, if your left ear is not functioning, then let me get the GP to see it. No, I don't need the GP. I'm like, I'm gonna get you to see the GP because I'm your nurse and I'm gonna tell you what to do, like in this moment right now. And they're good with me. They listen. They're like, oh yeah, all right. So the GP saw him and he had to get his ears syringed. Then the following week, another one of the guys was like, actually, do you know what? Yeah, nurse, my ears are not really functioning. Do you get what I mean? So it was
it takes that one
This
person.
is what I'm saying. And then the next week, someone was like, actually, do you know what? I need to, and now we're starting like dropping clinics in the hospital for the guys to feel open about talking about things like their weight, their health, drinking fizzy drinks and stuff like that. Because what I've even realised is like, before, none of these guys used to buy separate drinks. All of a sudden, they're all buying vitamin water. And it all started from one of them saying, I want to be more conscious about my health. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like as guys, what happens is that you don't want to be the first, but someone has to take that bold step. Do you get what I mean?
Would you say like, Adura, I guess I was going to say, would you say like it's healthy for guys, and I guess just anyone in general, but specifically guys, to kind of form groups?
That's what I was going to mention. That you mentioned the drop-in clinics. That's actually the best way of actually starting it. So I know that in some churches they might have drop-in clinics, drop-in sessions for people to attend, and even just from men's groups. To be fair, men's meetings. I don't know what goes on in men's meetings, but one of those things. But one of those things can be, okay, let's just talk about, and it doesn't even have to be a big thing where you make it, you get all deep or formal. Just coffee. I mean, they do coffee mornings all the time, tea, biscuits, whatever. Drinks. Just come and chat about how things are.
This kind of leads on to my, because I told you guys I had a couple of questions. So like, I've got a few doctors in my family, and I know the different aspects of health. So, or like medicine. So there's like preventive medicine and like, other types. So would you say that there's preventive mental health care?
Yes.
So basically, are there things that you can do to prevent yourself from going through certain things?
I'm an advocate of activity. So what I mean by activity is that usually when people are feeling low, one of the things that we notice is that, like I said before, they start doing less. And the problem with that is that in the short term, if you're doing less, it's less effort. I'll just stay in bed.
Easier to cope.
I'll just go to work. It's easier to cope. But obviously in the long term, if you're not doing the things that you enjoy doing, your life becomes really small and very limited. And the world around you just kind of encroaches in on you, and people do say that they feel like they're so isolated because they're not really interacting with the world. So what we say to people is just increase your activity. That's the one way, like one of the main ways that we say, increase your activity, start doing things again, start doing things that are meaningful, because that's the thing, everyone can go to work, everyone on the opposite side can go and party and all that, but if they're not working or if they're not doing some sort of meaningful activity, it's still going to lead them down that road.
I suppose they do, like, on the other hand, where they now do so many things, they get overwhelmed.
So on that side, it's like finding the sweet spot. I always say to people that I work with, find your sweet spot. So it's not about doing too much that you now get burnt out, because that is also going to be a surefire way to feeling a bit, some way about life, just because it's just too much for you.
In a situation whereby, because you mentioned culture, and in terms of dealing with the perspective of how certain cultures deal with health, mental health, what would you guys advise that we do to be aware, from a certain culture? How would you advise that we are aware of mental health?
Educate yourself.
Yeah, educate. I mean, I know that in G's house, specifically, I think it was like last year or something, they opened up they did like a counselling day, or like a counselling awareness day, where they were talking about mental health, and I think that was the first time in 8 years or 9 years that I've been actually in Jesus House where they actually spoke about that, and I was actually quite surprised because I wasn't actually expecting it. Opening up the conversation, talking about it, not avoiding or skirting around the issue, because I feel like culturally, from the culture I'm from, I'm from Nigeria, and people tend to skirt around it because they don't necessarily understand it.
Right. Yeah,
and it's still a bit of a taboo, but it's out there.
Do you know what? I'm Nigerian as well. And I feel like a lot of people from our culture kind of struggle to deal with or respond to it because they genuinely don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me to my next question. I know, I have a lot of questions. So if I have a friend, right, for example, who says some things that are, you know, a bit weird. Okay, so quit their job, you know, and saying things like, yo, I'm gonna end it, blah blah blah. What do I do, you know, in that kind of situation? How do I handle that? How can I be there for that kind of person? Because I know something's not right.
Well, that's a bit extreme, isn't it?
It is extreme, but the truth is, it happens.
No, it does.
Do you know one of the preventative mechanisms for suicide prevention I've realised actually is accountability. There's a girl that I used to work alongside, and I still speak to her now occasionally. She's a young girl. She has a disability where she's in a wheelchair, and all her life she's had to depend on her mum, and she's now 18.
Yeah.
And she still depends on her mum for a lot of things. But she said there was a time when she was about to end it all. She was about to like top herself with medication, and a friend texted her saying that she needed her help for something. And she knew in that moment that she's the only person that could do that thing for that friend.
Yeah.
And she made her accountable. So even I've had friends whereby they have actually told me that they are feeling suicidal. They are feeling really, really low. The circumstances around them, the odds are not looking great. And as the friend, you know, it's actually because of them that I actually started my own little projects here and there. I give them tasks to do. Can you just look this up for me? I'm working today, but I need someone to reply to my emails. If you could do that for me for this week, for the week after, I make them accountable to me. Because I'm asking you to do something, you're the only person that could do it. And if you're a friend that they respect you, then they will look at things from a different perspective.
Okay, guys, so what would you say to a man who's watching this, you know, right now and potentially going through some mental challenges? How would you, you know, what advice would you give, you know, in terms of how to handle that?
Don't avoid speaking about the issue. Find someone you trust. It doesn't have to be just anyone, but find someone that you trust, that you feel you won't be judged by. Speak to them about how you feel, and if you feel that that's not necessarily an option, then obviously seek help from a pastor in your church, for example, or even your mental health professional like your GP. That might be.
Is there like a helpline or something?
There are helplines. Samaritans, that's a good one. So the Samaritans,
they're always like, you feel like I'm at the end when I'm talking to somebody, like, I'm on the bridge.
I mean, I can see, but to be fair, there are loads of mental health charities out there. All you have to do is just Google them, in my opinion. Like it's not hard. Just Google mental health.
But would you say
charities.
There's a good one that you would recommend?
They're all trained.
To be fair, they're all trained. So I prefer. I do like the Samaritans, to be fair, because I think that they will talk. They will talk. I mean, there are people who are befrienders that actually do the job of befriending you and talking. So I think that it is a good option. Go on.
I was going to say, so your advice is, one, talk.
Just don't keep quiet.
Yeah.
I think too many people keep quiet and they avoid, and they think I'm gonna be judged. No one's gonna listen to me. I'm gonna be seen as weak. My status is gonna be brought low to the ground. But the truth of the matter is, it's all lies. I mean, everyone is going through this. Even if people don't actually say it, everyone is going through it. Mental health is everyone's problem. So it's a case of the more people speak, as we said before, the more people speak, the more other people are encouraged to speak. So that's mine.
Accountability. I feel like, well, you guys are all friends anyway, so this is one group. But I feel like accountability, I feel like there's such joy coming from like when you know the people that you're speaking to, so that like you can see their progress, you see where they're going, you know them at their low, you know them at their high, and you identify their weaknesses, and you can build each other up to strengthen that one person or that group of people. I feel like such joy comes from seeing someone go from such a low to such a high, and experiencing that journey with someone. I feel like that's what builds friendships, brotherhoods, sisterhoods. So I feel like accountability 100% is biblical as well. I just feel like sometimes you may feel like you're alone, but you're not alone. And I feel like, especially for men, not enough people talk about men's health issues, like full stop.
Because women, like, they love to talk.
Yes, so this is the thing. Like, I feel like if I wanted to find out about women's health, I can Google it. I know people on Instagram that are doing, they're going to start talking about hormonal issues, this one, that one, blood types. But with men, it's like if you Google it, you just get that one guy that's been through everything that is like, listen, I am the pioneer of all blogging men. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like men's issues need to be spoken about a lot more. Okay. But I feel like you guys can be the pioneers for that, man. Seriously. Like, I feel like you guys can genuinely start the topic, start talking about it, because everyone wants to work with men and mental health and all this, even physical health. I personally like working in men's physical health because they're so laid back, but then it's hard, because then when there is an issue, I don't know how to address it. Okay. Because you guys have literally waited until you're dying before I can help you, and it doesn't help my job. It makes it harder, but then when you're okay, obviously it helps me a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, you know, they're all calm or whatever. But I feel like with men in general, they don't talk, even when they are ill. So I feel like when it comes to physical health, when it comes to mental health, you guys need to be accountable. You need to know what is right, what is normal. Do you know what I mean? Now women are talking more about the abnormalities of what we go through and the things that we experience growing up and like our body differences. But men don't, because you guys just wear long tops and jeans. But the reality is that there is a lot going on underneath all your clothes, underneath all the hair you have, underneath beard gang. There are things that you need to talk about. So I feel like accountability and just growing as brothers.
Do you think it's like from like a young age? Because as you said, like, men in general don't like to talk. So do you think it would help that when you're bringing up, say,
100%,
a man that you know, it's important for you to say, oh, how are you feeling? You know, to talk about things and everything else. I don't know, like, your experiences in terms of like when you were growing up, if you were kind of encouraged to.
No one asked me anything.
Seriously.
But I think that the onus is actually not the onus completely, but there is a responsibility on leaders.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess speak more about it from their perspective, because I think a lot of people, if they saw their pastors in church or whichever mentor they have actually being open about how they struggled, and you know what, to be fair, some people have done this. I think it encourages people more.
Yeah, definitely.
It's no longer a stigma. It's no longer a taboo. So in my opinion, I think that it kind of, I feel like I throw the responsibility up there for people to speak about it more, to share their knowledge, to, you know, just be open. Because I think, you know, I guess that it's just the challenge for me, I guess, working in mental health, is that a lot of guys say, you know what, if I speak up, everyone will think I'm X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And
failure.
We need to kind of break that, especially within the culture. You know, no, you're not X, Y, Z. No, you are not weird or abnormal.
You're just normal.
You're just normal.
Yeah, because everyone is.
So I think if they start talking about it up from the top, I think the job is.
I got a dream. Who cares how to move when you're covered by your own face? But I'm still, I know it's kinda hard, but I'm still, But I'm still, never switch gears, Can't do this on my own. So far gone when I get into the zone. Still, the doubts do roam, cause people out here make me feel like I'm wrong. Still, I feel like I'm home.